Marriage is built on trust, shared moments, and a comfortable predictability. But what happens when that predictability shatters? When the person you know best begins to act in ways that are not just strange, but deeply chillingly unsettling. Tonight we delve into a story, reportedly true, from a man whose life took a terrifying turn, all starting with a simple, unnerving habit: his wife peeking. The author, let's call him Mark, had been married to Lynn for 6 years. He described their relationship as loving, stable, normal. Lynn was a pragmatic woman, a lawyer, not prone to flights of fancy or odd behaviors. That's why, when it started, Mark initially dismissed it as a quirky, fleeting phase. It began subtly. Mark would be working in his home office, and out of the corner of his eye, he'd catch a flicker of movement. Lynn, just her head and perhaps a shoulder, peeking around the doorframe. When he'd look up, she'd quickly retract, sometimes with a little, almost embarrassed smile, if he caught her fast enough. Other times she'd be gone before he could fully register it. At first he thought it was cute, maybe a new game she was playing. He'd even joke about it. "Catch you later, peeker," he'd call out. She'd usually laugh it off, but offer no real explanation. But the peeking escalated. It wasn't just the office door anymore. He'd be in the kitchen, and she'd peek from behind the refrigerator, watching TV in the living room, and her head would appear for a split second from behind the sofa. The unnerving part was the silence. No announcement, no prelude, just the peek. Mark remembers one evening vividly. He was reading in bed. Lynn was supposedly downstairs. He felt that familiar prickle on his neck, the sense of being observed. He slowly lowered his book and scanned the darkened room. Nothing. Then his eyes drifted to the narrow gap of the slightly ajar closet door, and there, in the sliver of blackness, he saw it. A fraction of her face, one eye visible, staring, not playfully, intently. When he said her name, Lynn, the eye vanished. The closet door remained still. He got up, opened it. Empty. He called for her, and she answered from downstairs, her voice perfectly normal, asking if he needed anything. This is when Mark's unease began to curdle into genuine concern, even fear. Her peeking was no longer confined to quick glances. Sometimes he'd turn around and find her standing silently in a doorway, just watching him, her expression unreadable. When he'd ask what she was doing, she'd blink, as if coming out of a trance, and offer a vague excuse, or sometimes just turn and walk away without a word. He tried to talk to her about it, expressing his growing discomfort. Lynn would either deny it outright, "What are you talking about, Mark? I haven't been peeking at you," or she'd become defensive, accusing him of being paranoid. This was so unlike the rational, communicative woman he'd married. The true terror, Mark wrote, began about a month into this bizarre behavior. The peeking became more predatory. He'd wake up in the middle of the night, not knowing why, only to see Lynn's silhouette at the foot of the bed, just standing there, watching him sleep. Or he'd be in the shower, and through the steamy glass, he'd see the distorted shape of her face pressed close, her eyes wide. One Saturday, Mark was in the basement, sorting through old boxes. The basement was dimly lit, a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. He heard a floorboard creak above him, common enough. But then he looked towards the wooden support beams that crisscrossed the low ceiling. In the deep shadows between two of the beams, almost camouflaged, he saw her, Lynn, lying flat on her stomach, squeezed into the narrow space, her head craned down, eyes fixed on him. Her position was contorted, unnatural. He cried out, a mix of shock and horror. "Lynn, what in God's name are you doing?" She didn't respond. She just stared. Her eyes, he said, looked darker, wider than usual. He scrambled backwards, heart hammering. He ran upstairs, shouting her name. He found her in the kitchen, calmly making tea, humming a little tune. She looked at him, surprised by his panicked state. "What's wrong, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost." He confronted her about the basement. She denied it, of course, said she'd been in the kitchen the whole time. But Mark knew what he saw. The image of her, wedged in the shadows above him, was seared into his mind. Mark started to feel like he was losing his mind. Was he imagining it? Was Lynn gaslighting him? He even considered setting up hidden cameras, but the thought of what he might capture, or Lynn finding them, terrified him even more. His work suffered. He was jumpy, sleep-deprived. Every shadow, every unexpected noise in their home sent his pulse racing. He felt hunted in his own house, by his own wife. The climax, as Mark described it, was the night he decided he couldn't take it anymore. He'd woken up around 3 a.m. The room was pitch black. He lay there, listening, his senses on high alert. Then he heard it, a soft rhythmic scratching sound, coming from asterisk under the bed asterisk. Frozen with terror, he slowly, ever so slowly, leaned over the edge of the mattress. He peered into the oppressive darkness beneath, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Two eyes, glinting faintly in the sliver of moonlight coming through the window, were staring up at him. Lynn's eyes. Her face was inches from his, upside down, a grotesque smile plastered on her lips. She was under the bed, looking up at him. Mark screamed. He scrambled out of bed, fumbling for the light switch. When the room flooded with light, Lynn was standing by the dresser, looking at him with feigned concern. "Mark, what is it?" "Bad dream." But this time, Mark didn't back down. He knew what he saw. He grabbed his keys, his wallet, and he fled the house. He drove to a friend's place, a shaking, incoherent mess. Mark wrote that he never went back. He initiated divorce proceedings through a lawyer. Lynn, through her own legal counsel, never offered an explanation for her behavior. She simply agreed to the divorce. Mark said he heard through mutual acquaintances that Lynn eventually moved out of state. No one ever mentioned her exhibiting such behavior again. To this day, Mark doesn't know what happened to his wife. Was it a psychological break, some bizarre, cruel game, or as he sometimes fears, in the dead of night, was the woman he married slowly replaced, or possessed, by something else entirely? Something that, just like to peek, the familiar can become the most terrifying. When the sanctuary of your home, and the trust in a loved one, is violated by such inexplicable and disturbing behavior, the scars can last a lifetime. What would you do if the person closest to you started to become unrecognizable? If you have a true scary story you'd like to share, you can find submission details in the description below. Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed this story, or perhaps didn't enjoy it in the most terrifying way, consider liking this video and subscribing for more true scary stories. Until next time, try not to look too closely into the shadows.